This is Ian Mann. We're continuing our teaching here on the hoax, the rapture hoax, Satan's plan to persecute the church during the Great Tribulation. We're going to be starting today with some scriptures out of Revelation. I'm reading from the King James Version of the Bible here. We're in chapter 7. And in chapter 7, it's where it tells about the 144,000 being sealed. And then it tells of a great multitude, which no man could number, from all nations and kindreds and tongues. And they're up at the throne of God, worshiping God. Then in verse 13, we'll start there. This is Revelation 7:13. And one of the elders answered, saying unto me, What are these which are arrayed in white robes, and whence came they? And I said unto him, Sir, thou knowest. And he said to me, These are they which came out of great tribulation, and have washed their robes, and made them white in the blood of the Lamb. Therefore are they before the throne of God, and serve him day and night in his temple, and he that sitteth on the throne shall dwell among them. And they shall hunger no more, neither thirst any more, neither shall the sun light on them, nor any heat. But for the Lamb which is in the midst of the throne shall feed them, and shall lead them unto living fountains of waters, and God shall wipe away all tears from their eyes. So here we have these people that came out of great tribulation, and it says they'll hunger no more. So what that obviously means is they hungered during the tribulation. They may have starved to death during the tribulation. They thirsted during the tribulation. They had no drink. They were subject, it says here, neither shall the sun light on them, nor any heat. You know, that one of the angels pours out his wrath, and the sun is given power to scorch men. Were these people unable to find shelter because you can't rent a house if you don't take the mark of the beast? You know, they're just kind of stuck in the wilderness or whatever, and they're starving. So my question is, how many people suffered these things because they fell for the pre-tribulation rapture doctrine? Because they said, oh, well, we won't be here for this tribulation. So they made no preparations of any kind. And then it came upon them unawares, and all of a sudden they're out there when the sun is scorching men, and they have no shelter, and they have no food, and they have no water. And all because they listened to some false prophet telling them, oh, we're going to be raptured off the earth, and we will not be subject to or suffer during the Great Tribulation. So that's why this doctrine is so satanic. That's why it's so evil, and that's why it's so important to expose it, and that's why this whole question is so important. This is not some academic scriptural debate about something, you know, whether you should have musical instruments in church or not. This is about something that is a life or death situation for people. So I just wonder how many of those people fell for that doctrine, and that's why they suffered that way. And they could have maybe not had to suffer that way. Now, you know, there will be some people suffering during the tribulation. There's nothing you can do. Like, look at the Job. You know, Job suffered because he was righteous. And you look at people like Corrie ten Boom. Now, Corrie ten Boom was a woman during World War II who hid Jewish people from the Germans. But eventually she got caught and put into a concentration camp herself. And so she was a Christian, but she suffered in those camps. Her sister Bessie was in the camp with her and died there. And she suffered in the camp with these people, but she was used by the Lord to bring a lot of these people to Christ. So a lot of these Jewish people that were in this prison camp with her, a lot of the women there came to Christ and got saved before they died. So God used her, but she had to suffer that tribulation. So that during the tribulation, there will be Christians who are going to be suffering and who are going to be called upon by the Lord to be a testimony, to win souls. So that's one of the reasons, which we'll be discussing later when we go over the three primary reasons the church absolutely, positively must be on earth during the tribulation. We'll be discussing that in a future lesson. Right now, we're going to continue on to Matthew 24. And what we're going to see, it's important that we see these scriptures now because so we see them in their proper context, that they're talking about the second coming of Christ. And because pre-tribulationists use a lot of them, to later on, they'll use them to as some kind of proof of a pre-trib rapture, even though they're clearly not talking about that. So we're in my book here called The Layman's Guide to the Rapture, available on Amazon. And when we get to verse 32 and 33 in Matthew chapter 24, Jesus tells him, now learn a parable of the fig tree. When his branch is yet tender and putteth forth leaves, you know that summer is nigh. So likewise ye, when ye shall see all these things, know that it is near, even at the doors. So he's given us these signs, the tribulation, the abomination of desolation, the persecutions, the different signs we've just read about in Matthew 24, so that we'll know his second coming is at hand. This is an exhortation to watch for these signs that will precede Christ's coming. Verse 34 tells us in no uncertain terms the importance of recognizing these signs, because he says, verily I say unto you, this generation shall not pass till all these things be fulfilled. So from the beginning of these signs till the end, it's going to be one generation that's going to see all these things happening. A lot of people believe we're in that generation now or approaching that generation, because the thing that we have now that has not happened since 70 AD is that Israel has been restored to their homeland and has become a nation again. So for thousands of years, 2,000 years, they weren't. They were just scattered, and then God brought them back, which is one of the end time signs. So it's very possible that we're the generation that will see Christ come back, or maybe our children. But anyways, so it's important. He says, this generation shall not pass till all these things be fulfilled, because we're seeing some of these things. Then, just to be sure we get the significance of this message, he goes on to say in verse 35, heaven and earth shall pass away, but my words shall not pass away. In other words, these things are going to happen. I'm telling you these things, they're going to happen. This is not some, like today's prophets. They just spew out all these things, and then some of them come to pass, some don't. I remember back in Y2K, I don't know if people were alive, how many people listening remember Y2K. All these prophets, they even used to have this radio station, I think it was called the Prophecy Channel or something. I don't know, all these people prophesying of all the stuff that was going to happen with Y2K. None of it happened. None of it happened. They just made it all up, because obviously they weren't hearing from God, because God's not going to tell you something's going to happen and it doesn't happen. If God tells you something's going to happen, it's going to happen. And that's why he's saying here, heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will not pass away. Now, we talked about this in a previous lesson. This is one of the most powerful statements ever made by Jesus. And it asserts plainly that he is God, and gives us no doubt that these words are of the utmost importance. And you have to wonder, why did he say that here at the end of the timeline, this end time events that he pictured for us? Why didn't he say it like after where he says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man cometh unto the Father but me. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will not pass away. That would be a good place to say it, to assert that he's really the Son of God, right? There's a number of places like that where he could have said it, but he chose to say it here. And not only that, he didn't say it just one time. Every time we read this end time sequence of events, we read it in Matthew 24, we read it in Mark 13, and we read it again in Luke 21. And every single time he gives us this turn of events, this sequence of events that's going to happen, which do not include a pre-tribulation rapture, every single time he gives us this list of events, he sums it up with, heaven and earth shall pass away, but my words shall not pass away. 3 times. Now, there's a real simple rule of thumb in reading the Bible, and it's like this. The more God says something, the more important it is. So the more times Jesus said this 3 times, like Pharaoh's dream, right, that Joseph interpreted, God repeated that dream twice. So Joseph knew this is important because God repeated it. He didn't just give it to him once. He gave it to him twice, because this is important. Because at the mouth of 2 or more witnesses, the truth will be established. So that's why Joseph advised Pharaoh to stock up the food. He knew this famine was coming. And so here he tells us 3 times. 3 times. So if there's no pre-tribulation rapture depicted in these events, you can be pretty sure there is no pre-tribulation rapture. Now in verse 36, Jesus adds a cautionary note. Even though he told us in verse 34 that the series of events leading up to his second coming would take place from start to finish within 1 generation, he adds this warning. But of that day and that hour knoweth no man, no, not the angels of heaven, but my Father only. So even though we'll know it's at the doors, like like with the parable of the fig tree, we'll know it's at the doors, we'll know it's going to happen any time, but we won't know the exact hour and day until it actually happens. Now, we're going to discuss this particular scripture quite a bit, because this is a big one that the pre-tribulationists like to use to prove their pre-tribulation rapture theory. But you can see here, it's not talking about that. It's talking about the second coming of Christ. That's what it's talking about. Now, warnings and a blessing. So the rest of chapter 24 consists of exhortations and warnings to watch and be ready. And what are we to watch and be ready for? It's pretty obvious. He's talking about being ready for the second coming. That's what he gave us and described in verses 29 and 30. Verses 37 through 39, he compares the second coming to the time of the flood. But as in the days of Noah were, so shall the coming of the Son of Man be. For as in the days that were before the flood, they were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage, until the day that Noah entered into the ark, and knew not until the flood came and took them all away. So shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. Now, pre-tribulationists try to equate the flood with the Great Tribulation and the ark with the pre-tribulation rapture, but it doesn't fit. And the reason is there's a glaring difference. Because according to pre-tribulation doctrine, after the rapture, if you're a Christian and you miss the rapture, or you're an unsaved person so you don't get raptured, you will have time during that next 7 years to get right with God and to get saved. And that's not going to happen. When the flood, the flood came and Noah was saved, all in one split second, 40 days and 40 nights, but the water started coming and that was it. Once the rain started, Noah got on the ark, God sealed the door, no one could get in. It's impossible to get saved. So it doesn't fit at all with the pre-tribulation scene where people will be able to get saved afterwards. Now, verses 40 and 42 in Matthew 24 still. Then shall two be in the field, one shall be taken, the other left. Two women shall be grinding at the mill, one shall be taken, the other left. Watch therefore, for you know not what hour your Lord doth come. So again, this is not an idea where one is raptured and one is left behind, but they're still serving the Lord. No, it's what it is. It's showing that God's a God of the heart. There'll be two people. There are people that, they on the outward appearance are the same, right? They look the same. They're both doing the same things, but one of them is right with the Lord and one isn't. It's that simple. It's that simple. He's a God of the heart. So even though they appear to be laboring in the Lord, they look the same on the outside, but they differ greatly in their hearts. One will be taken at the gathering at Christ's coming, and the other not, because they're not really saved. Then the next warning comes from compares the second coming of Christ to a thief in verses 43 and 44. But know this, that if the good men of the house had known in what watch the thief would come, he would have watched and would not have suffered his house to be broken up. Therefore be ye also ready, for in such an hour as you think not, the Son of Man cometh. So it's going to be in an hour when you think not. Now, the thief and the night scriptures are especially popular with pre-tribulationists again, and we'll be covering that in a lot of detail in a later lesson. But remember, we're still reading about the second coming of Christ, not a pre-tribulation rapture. This is why you need to see these scriptures in the true context in which they are written. Then the rest of Matthew of chapter 24 compares the faithful servant and the evil servant. It gives us some insight also into what it means to watch and be ready. What does he mean by watch and be ready? So he says, who then is a faithful and wise servant, whom his Lord hath made him ruler over his household, to give them meat in due season? Blessed is that servant, whom his Lord, when he cometh, shall find so doing. Verily I say unto you that he shall make him ruler over all his goods. So you just keep doing what the Lord has told you to do. But if the faithful and wise servant simply does what he's supposed to do every day, that's what it means to be ready. But if that evil servant shall say in his heart, my Lord delayeth his coming, and shall begin to smite his fellow servants, to eat and drink with the drunken, the Lord of that servant shall come in a day when he looketh not for him, and in an hour that he is not aware of, and shall cut him asunder, and appoint him his portion with the hypocrites. There shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth. So even though there are specific signs regarding the second coming, the evil servant ignores them and gives himself over to sin. You can read some of these signs. I've had people say this to me before. Oh, there's been wars going on forever. And, some of the things that are going on, they've just been going on forever. People harden their hearts and become calloused to the things that they see that are happening. And they don't realize that these are end time signs. And so they just continue on in sin. And all of a sudden, one day, boom, the Lord comes back and it's too late for them. So the evil servant, even though there are specific signs regarding the second coming, the evil servant ignores them and gives himself over to sin. Just as Eve was deceived into thinking she wouldn't die, the evil servant is deceived into thinking his Lord has delayed his coming. Consequently, he is caught unawares. And this fits perfectly with Luke 21:34. And take heed to yourselves, lest at any time your hearts be overcharged with surfeiting and drunkenness, and cares of this life, and so that day come upon you unawares. So there are two things we've been exhorted to watch by the Lord. First, the parable of the fig tree tells us to watch for the end time signs. And secondly, the parable of the evil servant tells us to watch our own behavior. We're to watch them together as the end approaches. Persecution is going to intensify as well as temptation. Satan's going to use every trick in the book to try to get us to deny Christ and to take the mark of the beast. And the end time signs are there to encourage us to stay on the right track and not lose faith, because we know the day of the Lord is fast approaching. So there you have Matthew 24. And we'll be visiting some of these examples in other lessons and other similar passages from Mark, Luke, and Paul. What you're going to see is that many of the scriptures used to prove a pre-tribulation rapture are actually talking about the second coming of Christ. Now, it's important also to keep sight of context here, because, you know, when you're doing these Bible studies, and especially these pre-tribulationists, they're studying on their subject and they're yanking a scripture from here and another one from there, and so what's very important to do is to just take Matthew 24 here. This is what I did, and I just read it from beginning to end. Didn't stop and talk or think, or I just read it from beginning to end. And what I found out is it took me about 6 minutes. So what that means is, and you can do this, and you can listen to it on a talking Bible or something like that. You're going to see it's going to take 5 or 6 minutes, maybe 7. But what you're going to see is that it was only about a minute or two after Jesus told his disciples, "They shall see the Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven with power and great glory." It's only about a minute later, maybe 2 minutes later, that he said, "But of that day and hour knoweth no man." So you can easily see what he's talking about when you just put the whole thing in context and just read it from beginning to end, because that's how Jesus preached it. Jesus didn't, go along and one day throw out, "Of that day knoweth no man," and then 2 days later throw out, "Oh, they shall see the sign of the Son of Man coming in glory." No, it was all just straight one fell swoop. And it's repeated in 3 different gospels because it was a message that he taught frequently. And every time he taught it, he said, "Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will not pass away." So that's going to be it for today. Thank you for watching. This is Ian Mann. You have been watching my series of lessons on the dangerous deception called the pre-tribulation rapture. If you have questions, please post them in the comments below. Also, please hit the like and subscribe button so that you can be notified and updated whenever I post a new lesson. You can also write to me at P.O. Box 4275. That's P.O. Box 4275. That's in Surf City, North Carolina, 28445. And if you'd like a copy of my book, The Layman's Guide to the Rapture, it's available at most or all online bookstores. I know for sure you can get it on Amazon, and you can also get it as an Amazon Kindle, as an ebook. Thank you for watching, and God bless.